In a world of chaos, you have the power to unlock a time-warping version of our show with a peek behind the scenes and even more Nathan and Krissy banter.
That's right. When you become a member of the most excellent 80s movies podcast at truestory.fm, you get episodes 1 week early.
Plus, each episode has bonus content for your listening delight and amusement that you can't get anywhere else.
And you can hop onto the truestory.fm Discord to join the conversation there too, where we chat about our show and all the other shows that truestory.fm has to offer.
So be a hero to this podcast and a hero to your ears. Go to True Story FM today, click on our show page, and become a member.
And when you're out there in the world, be sure to keep the most excellent 80s movies podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on,
dudes.
Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Hey, psst. Hey, you see that Snickers over there? No one's looking. You should just take it.
No! Don't listen to him, my son. That would be stealing, and stealing is a sin.
Sin Schmin, it's a friggin' Snickers bar. You deserve to have it. Sinning really satisfies you.
Repent, my child. Virtue is the only real snack worth savoring. For that candy bar is merely a gateway to nougat damnation. Has this ever happened to you?
Listening to the devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other, and you're not sure what to think?
Then we're here to help. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Tommy Metz III, and this season on All the Feelings, we're examining the 7 deadly sins.
You know, the fun ones.
And the 7 heavenly virtues.
Which are also a thing. Through personal stories, historical oddities, and way too much embarrassment, we take you on a thrilling journey through all the goods and the bads you hear about in church.
But without all that pesky church stuff. So come join us for All the Feelings Season 9, a sometimes funny podcast about being human. All the sins, all the virtues.
All in one place. Go to allthefeelings.fun to learn more, or subscribe to All the Feelings wherever you get your podcasts.
Game over.
Horror movies get a bad rap. They're cheap thrills, mindless gore, not cinema, blah, blah, blah.
But we here at Sitting in the Dark know better. We know that horror is more than just jump scares and chainsaws. It's a reflection of our deepest fears, our anxieties, Okay, and there's a lot of jump scares and chainsaws.
Join us, Pete Wright, Tommy Metz III, Kyle Olson, and Keenan Diaz, as we cut into the dark heart of horror cinema.
Every episode, we explore a different facet of the genre, from survival horror to home invasions, from zombies to birds. We tickle the tropes, analyze the angles, and sharpen our own axes along the way.
We'll introduce you to the classics that shaped the genre.
And the modern masterpieces that are pushing the boundaries of terror.
Sitting in the Dark is your guide to navigating the terrifying, thrilling, and sometimes hilariously bad world of horror movies.
We'll help you understand why we love to be scared.
And maybe even convert you into a horror fan yourself.
So turn off the lights, close the basement door,
and join us.
Sitting in the dark.
Welcome to the most excellent 80s movies podcast. It's the podcast where we are getting too old for this shit as we watch our way through the 80s movies we think we love or might have missed with these, our modern grown-up eyes to see how they held up. And today we're talking about Lethal Weapon, a movie selection from 1987 about which Letterboxd says, if these two can learn to stand each other, the bad guys don't stand a chance. Veteran button-down LAPD detective Roger Murtaugh is partnered with unhinged cop Martin Riggs, who, distraught after his wife's death, has a death wish and takes unnecessary risks with criminals at every turn. The odd couple embark on their first homicide investigation as partners involving a young woman known to Murtaugh with ties to a drug and prostitution ring. And that's the story of Lethal Weapon, which we are going to talk about today. I am Krissy Lenz, director of the Neighborhood Comedy Theater in downtown Mesa, Arizona. And with me today, as always, is
Nathan Blackwell, independent filmmaker.
independent
Hi.
filmmaker Nathan Blackwell. Hi. And also, we are so lucky today. Joining us is genius podcaster of the Next Reel Film podcast and our guru of everything at True Story FM, Andy Nelson. Hi, Andy.
Why, hello there. So glad to be here. And, I always enjoy chatting with you two on this show. So I'm thrilled to be back.
And we are so
Yay.
excited to have you. Lethal Weapon. We have been putting it off so we could get it as close to Christmas as possible.
Yeah, this is like Die Hard. Kind of falls into the debate of, is this a Christmas movie? Is this not a Christmas movie? I feel like there's a lot less evidence that this is a Christmas movie, despite there being so much Christmas in it. It's just a Shane Black movie.
Well, yeah, Shane Black loves throwing Christmas into his movies whenever he gets a chance, which is pretty much every time he makes something.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a Christmas vibe. I mean, kind of like Die Hard, it starts with Christmas music. It definitely kind of has that
Christmas
feel
music.
of
Yeah.
Christmas going on. But it is funny. Like, you don't hear, like, when it comes to the debate about whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie, Lethal Weapon doesn't come up as often in that sort of debate. I suppose it could be, but you just don't hear it.
Yeah, but it layers it on thick. Like, it's definitely the backdrop of most of this movie,
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like, not to get into the weeds, but I feel like the structure of the story of a Christmas movie has to be within the movie, and that's what makes it a Christmas movie. Like, are they learning a valuable lesson and peace on earth and stuff like that? But I don't know.
And are they doing that in Die Hard?
No, they don't.
But Die Hard's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, I'm willing to go rogue and agree with that, to contradict everything I just said. But yeah, it's a slippery
I
slope.
think they learn a valuable lesson in Lethal Weapon. Like, definitely, at least Riggs finds the Christmas spirit within himself.
And there's
Yeah.
a valuable lesson to be learned when you're depressed around the holidays about the passing of a loved one. Talk to a friend.
Yeah, maybe.
Yep.
Okay, so how would we describe this movie as if it was strictly a Christmas movie, with the plot wise, but maybe kind of omitting like the heroine or the trained assassins?
prostitution.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's Christmas time, right?
Yeah,
So,
and I think that the heroine easily could just be, a type of Christmas present for
Right.
some people.
Yeah.
white snow.
And the trained assassins are just like the reindeer. They're like the main guy, Gary Busey, is just like the Rudolph of this movie.
It is a shadow company, and you got to say, I mean, nobody's really seen Santa Claus, so probably Santa right now is running the most effective shadow company out there.
There's
That's
a big
true.
shipment coming this holiday season.
So I realized when I was watching this movie that I have never seen it before.
What? Spit take?
What? Wow.
I've seen all the parts that everybody has seen, but I've never actually sat down and watched this movie, and so I didn't know 99% of what happens in it. It was all new to me.
Wow.
Have you seen any of the others? Like, did you watch the others thinking you had seen this one?
I think not. I think I've seen I've definitely seen the scene where he's on the toilet and there's a bomb.
In the second one, yeah.
Okay, that's the second one. So I
Right.
think maybe I have seen the second one.
Okay.
That's the one with the South Africans and diplomatic immunity. All of that. Does that ring a bell at all?
No bells are being rung whatsoever.
Then maybe you've only seen the toilet scene.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's some like pop culture primers and references and moments that get replayed over and over again that even if people like don't know what like Lethal Weapon is, or even like Predator or RoboCop or Ghostbusters or some of these other things, like kids are still kind of aware of them. Like they know
Right.
the gist of it, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that goes, you know, there's tons of stuff. Like I've never seen Chariots of Fire, but I pretty much know what Chariots of Fire is, you know, because I get the clip shows all the time, you know.
But
Right.
is that though because like would you be able to, would they know the same stuff about 48 Hours that they would Lethal Weapon? Because I mean Lethal Weapon had, I think was it 2016 there was a TV show. I know it's
Yeah,
somewhere
Yes.
in the
yeah,
Yes.
last
yeah.
decade there was a TV show. So it makes me wonder like if they only know about it because of that.
I don't
More so
know.
than it's in the cultural
We're
zeitgeist.
gonna have to get some data.
Let's go poll some
Yes.
teenagers.
So did Rocket watch Lethal Weapon with you on this one?
No, he did not. He did not watch it with me. I was on my own, and it's a good thing too because it starts with boobs.
Yeah, well, that's how
Very
most
Right, right.
first
that's
thing
how Christmas movies should start, with titties
with
up front.
boobs. Yep, just right at the beginning, some boobies. Boobies off a balcony
Mhm.
is the number one as our introduction to this Christmas movie. Is a girl with her boobies out and a beautiful white negligee just decides that what she wants for Christmas is to dive headfirst into a parked car.
Mhm.
And then we go visit the Murtaugh family, who very awkwardly have a birthday party for their dad while he's in the tub.
Right.
I
Yeah.
told my wife, don't ever do
Uh-huh.
that when I'm
Yeah.
taking a bath. Don't
It was
ever
a
bring the
different
kids in
time.
with
It
a
was a
birthday
different
cake.
time.
Don't bring the
Definitely a
kids
weird
in.
thing.
Don't bring the cake in.
Yeah, the whole thing. It's like,
Holy
what? No,
smoke.
no.
So like 87 is now what, 35 years ago? Right?
Okay. If you
Isn't
say
it?
so. Well,
36,
you're the
yeah.
filmmaker, so you have to do
Huh?
the math.
No, well, the filmmakers don't do math.
Well, the comedians definitely don't do math.
So, audience, please write in. Was 1987 35 years ago? 30, so it'd be
30, it's 36 years.
36.
Yeah, 36.
Who's, yeah, give or take. So, but yeah, it's hard to believe that now some of these things are almost 40 years old, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You think about like in the 80s, like what was 40 years old? It's like World War II. That was 40
Yeah.
years old. And so it's interesting, this movie in particular, Vietnam casts a long shadow over the whole story
Yeah.
of the movie. You have
It
people
really
who
does.
served in Vietnam, and so it's like, how do you wind down a soldier? You know, you've got all the mercenaries who are highly trained, all the PTSD from Vietnam. Like everyone is
Mhm.
like, you know, like 12, 20 years out from having experienced that. You know, and that's an interesting part that I didn't remember of the story.
It was definitely
Yeah.
something my wife and I were talking about after or while it was going on because we're like, wait, so they both served in Vietnam, but there's an age joke between the two of them. How
Mhm.
Murtaugh is like, I was, I can't remember. I was learning to get my driver's license when you weren't even a thought in your dad's pants or whatever.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so we're like, okay, so wait a minute, could that actually have happened? And I mean, the Vietnam War, we're like, oh yeah, we looked it up. Oh, yeah, it did run 20 years. There was that length of time where it could have happened. And then my wife landed on the Lethal Weapon wiki, and she's like, well, it says that Riggs was born in 49, and I think Murtaugh was 11 years older than him. So I was like, okay, I can see that. But yeah, it's interesting that there's this age gap between the two of them, and they're also vets serving together or
Mhm.
like now working together. And so that was an interesting element to the story that I completely forgot about as well. And the whole element with not just Mr. Joshua, but like the general and like
The
everything
whole
that
bad
they're
guy
doing.
plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole like Air America, you know, ex-CIA thing of selling drugs to make money,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Very interesting.
But this movie is, you know, it's like, so someone just coming in, never having seen it, like a Krissy lens.
That's me.
It's probably feels like it's rife with so many like buddy cop movie cliches, but it's
Mhm.
because it kind of like created a lot of them, or at least popularized them. Like I'm sure they existed, but like the odd couple, it's like, and this is your partner, your new partner. Like this is really kind of where a lot of that stuff kind of became popular,
Mhm. And I love that aspect of it. Like when we meet our two main characters, like we said, it's kind of weird to meet cute in the bathtub with your whole family. But we're getting the sense that Murtaugh is a family man and that he's got a, somewhat chaotic but precious home life with lots of kids and family. And then we meet Riggs,
Who's
who's
living
like,
like the Rockford File like dreams of living on a beach, but
yeah.
lonely, and all he has is a dog, and he's ready to shoot his face off.
He's ready to shoot his face off, and he's and buns. So there's boobs and then buns right at the very beginning for no reason at all. We get Mel Gibson's
Oh, there's
buns.
reasons.
As he's just wandering around sadly, like smoking and drinking beer as his morning routine. So if his wife is recently dead, did she live in that hovel on the beach with him?
I mean, that's a good question. I kind of had a feeling he ended up there after
Yeah, because it
after
was a
everything with
while
her.
ago. It wasn't like last year or something, right?
Yeah, it was like sometime. What did he? It was months. It wasn't over a year. Like it was like 4 months or something. So I don't know. I guess I could see him like if he's this distraught, just kind of like trashing everything and just ending up here.
Okay. So like maybe he had a house and their beach RV was just a little getaway, and then he was
Right.
like,
They were
"Oh, I'm
renting.
gonna go." Yeah, he's gonna go just live there and smoke in bed and run around with his buns out. So we get to know him as being a loose cannon, a real uncouth like weirdo, because he does a drug deal where he's like, shoot the guy. He's just
Well,
like,
so he's undercover, and we legit don't know at this point if he is robbing them by being a cop or it's an actual sting. Like when he reveals that he's a cop, it's not like a bunch of agents run in. Like I think deliberately we are watching to see who this dude is, and we're not entirely sure whether or not he's actually just robbing them for the money, if he's that bad of a dude. But
but he's
then,
not.
yeah, but they walk that line at the very beginning. Is he insane or is he just traumatized? How bad is he? And then the reveal throughout the whole movie is that he's actually deep down a really nice guy who cares.
Yeah,
He's just a little broken.
he's just
Yeah.
he's more than a little broken.
He's a lot of broken.
It's
hilarious.
It's an 80s funny broken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like any of these 80s movies, the psychiatrist is kind of a bad guy or
So dismissed.
gets it wrong, and because we believe in the common man and common sense, and
that's a thread they ride through this entire franchise. Every time that psychiatrist comes back to talk, like she's always just like laughed out of the office. Like, yeah. It's if anything happens, it's my fault. All right, get out of here. Like that's exactly how they kind of treat her. It's like
that's not just this movie. That's like all sorts of like 80s movies.
Yeah.
And you also get it with like the remember the bad guy in Ghostbusters? It's the EPA. The Environmental Protection Agency. Oh, what a dick. Get him out of here. Regulation. Screw off.
You're right.
Yeah, it's interesting how aggressive we were towards psychologists and psychiatrists back then.
Well, and even just in the portrayal though, and that was an interesting thing to kind of look back, especially like through today's eyes, of the portrayal of, okay, this character, this cop is so broken that he should be registered as a lethal weapon, that whole line and everything. And we have him as this, we see him as a broken, like struggling with kind of the loss of his wife, but not until we get this whole setup with him, like the scene you were just talking about, Krissy, with that sting operation, where once he catches that one guy catches him, he kind of goes off like, shoot me, and we're like, okay, so is he just crazy? Like, how far? Like, he's so far he's going to push it all the way to the end where he's putting the gun in his mouth and all this crazy stuff. And it does, like, when you look at that through today's eyes, like the portrayal of a person who's going through grief and trauma, and then in a very comedic way, like portraying it like, he's just, he's so crazy, he's going to jump off the building with a potential jumper and all of this sort of stuff. Like they really push that line of being a lethal weapon to, and then it becomes a hard line to kind of continue riding through the series, because then they're like, well, he kind of got through his grief, so now he just needs to be a wild and crazy cop who's just always like pushing the limits and stuff. And it just, I don't know how well it speaks to the idea of dealing with grief and depression. Like, if he out of the gate had just been just a wild and crazy cop always pushing things, it probably would have played better. But now when you see it, it's like, I don't know how well that, the work that he gets on his depression over the course of the story really plays today,
Well, yeah, I haven't revisited the sequels in such a long time. It's that would be a tough thing to really kind of continue, is that edge, of how wild man he is.
And that becomes like, I mean, I haven't, the second one I enjoy, the third and fourth I really didn't care for at all. My recollection was, though, they emphasize his kind of crazy antics. Like, say, I think it's in the second one also, where somebody's being held in a hotel room way up high, and he like pushes the witness or something, and he grabs the witness and he basically throws him out the window with the witness, and they fall and land in the pool far below. So they, like, he keeps doing all this sort of crazy stuff, and that becomes his character. And then they also really continue to hit you over the head with the emphasis of family, 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 to the point where, like, everybody's family at the end of it is just it's so clumsy the way that they deal with it. But I don't know, like, right out of the gate, just singling this film out, it's an interesting thing, because it also, it ends up, as I was watching it, like, who is the protagonist of the story? It seems like Murtaugh is the protagonist of the story, but we spend so much time dealing with Riggs and his issues, to the point where when the story's kind of resolved at the end, Murtaugh stops the bad guys, we have to have this whole other fight with Riggs and the bad guy and Mr. Joshua in the lawn.
That part's ridiculous. It's like,
they each get their own revenge fight.
Yeah. Which is so silly. Like, with the hose, the fire hydrant is going off, so everything's getting soaked. The good guys intentionally drove a car into the Murtaugh home.
That seemed like not a great play.
Not to mention the fact that they already had been in the house. They left a note for Mr. Joshua, so when he goes in, he sees the little note like, nobody here but us cops, or whatever the cheeky thing is. But they left two cops outside innocently to end up getting killed by him. I'm like, well, if you were here and you, like, had set up this whole plan, you got your family safe, why put these two cops out here just to get killed? Like, that was like the worst plan.
They've incurred so much paperwork from this entire movie. Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, but everybody at the end, there's like the fire department's there. There's it's crawling with cops. And Murtaugh's just like, no, you got to let him fight it out. He's got to do his karate battle. It's his arrest. Back off, everyone. Do you want us to stop this fight? No, I'm going to keep fighting. Okay. All right. So I guess that's supposed to be more evidence that he's like unhinged, because he's got to finish this hand-to-hand combat battle and choke the guy out with his thighs.
They each have to move kind of into the middle, to where it's like Murtaugh plays it safe and he has to become a little more of a killer, and then Riggs has to become a little more normalized and accept, like, family,
Right.
It to me, it reminds me of almost kind of like a Western, especially kind of like the whole Die Hard ending. It's like, I have defeated you. I've decided not to kill you. Oh, then you pull a gun. Oh, self-defense. Boom.
Yeah.
The Die Hard ending, that felt very much kind of like Western gunslingers to me.
Right. Although I suppose Die Hard, since it came out a year later, has to say it used the Lethal Weapon ending.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh no. Uh-huh. But yeah, that's and that happens in a lot of movies. It's like, well, we want it both ways. The hero can't murder someone at the end, but we really want to murder this guy. We really want to
Yeah.
kill him. So it's like, oh, I've let you go, and then they do something to knock themselves off of a cliff, or they undo themselves by their greed. Like there's some last minute moment to where then the villain dies. Hang on to my hand, and then they die.
Yeah, just classic tropey stuff.
Which I love. Those were the parts I loved. Were all the buddy cop, things that have become cliche because they were made to be cliche by this movie.
Yes.
That was the parts I loved. The parts I didn't love were how confusing the plot was, like the actual plot of like how they murdered a girl with pills even though she jumped off the balcony. Because her dad knew too much about how they were bringing in the heroin. Right? Am I getting it right?
Yes.
And then they kill him with a helicopter.
Right. They have to get rid of the anonymous hooker by blowing up her house.
Right. By completely blowing up her house. There is a really cute scene that I did remember having seen where they're interrogating the little kid and they're like, was he black like we or white like him? Did he have blonde hair or pink? And the kid's just pointing. That's a really cute scene. They're like, you're gonna bust Dixie. You're gonna bust Dixie. No, Dixie's gonna get blown to literal smithereens. So like the bad guys for being a shadow. What are they called? A shadow
company.
The shadow company.
Shadow company.
The shadow company.
How can they be a shadow company if they're blowing up people's homes and killing you with a helicopter right outside your house? Like they're driving up with a helicopter.
Well,
That's
who
not
knows how much other stuff they're up to that we don't know about because they're the shadow company.
They're not
it's
being
the
very
80s.
shadowy.
We don't have cameras everywhere. People forget very quickly. LA, there's helicopters all the time flying around in LA. Right. So nobody thinks about it. These things happen.
Look.
Honestly, it is one of those things where as a shadow company, the actions that they take, I mean, it almost seems more Shane Black to have the actions play out in such big ways as they do than it actually fits in context of what it should be for this story. If they're shadow agents, everything should be a little more covert and hidden.
Right.
They silent assassin type of things. But no, it's very big and bombastic. And that ends up feeling very, very much kind of what Shane Black likes to do and with his writing. And I suppose when you look at Richard Donner, I'm trying to think like, what was he doing right before
Goonies.
This? It was like the Goonies and Lady Hawk both came out right before. And so I don't know. I guess I don't necessarily see
There's much. So for those who don't know Shane Black, he's done obviously like Lethal Weapon. He did The Last Boy Scout, Last Action Hero, Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He did Iron Man 3, and he did one of my favorite new buddy movies, The Nice Guys.
And then unfortunately went and did The Predator.
Yeah, I didn't name that one, did I?
So bad. Yeah, and I know a lot of people love the Monster Squad, which I don't really care for, but he did.
I might look that up on my list too.
Yeah, that's not a good one.
The Wolfman Scott Nard's Monster Squad.
That's the one.
That one? I've never seen it.
That's the one, though. Yeah. Well, you can talk about it on a future episode. He wrote it with I can't remember some. I think the director Fred Decker is what it says here.
Excellent.
But this was like early in his career, and Shane Black was very.
It was like his first like majorly produced thing.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Right. It was, and he had just like he really caught on suddenly. Like people loved the way he writes his scripts, and so that really kind of sold it. I mean, I'm looking at it here, and it's like just reading just some of the first part of the first page here. Fade in, city of angels lies spread out beneath us in all its splendor, like a bargain basement promised land. Camera soars, dips, winds its way slowly down, bringing us in over the city as we super main titles. Titles end as we spiral down toward a lush high-rise apartment complex, the moon reflected in glass. Camera continues to move in through billowing curtains into the inner sanctum of a penthouse apartment, and here, boys and girls, is where we lose our breath, because spread-eagled on a sumptuous designer sofa lies the single most beautiful girl in the city. Blonde hair, a satin nightgown that positively glows, Sam Cooke music crooning from $500 speakers. And it just kind of goes. It's like very easy to read, very big,
Very
very easy.
punchy, very
Yeah.
very,
And he speaks to you, the reader, like, and here, boys and girls, like, and he throws that sort of stuff in, which you didn't really see much. And so people really just kind of fell for his writing. And that's really, like, I think, wasn't Lethal Weapon like, it was like the biggest,
it was like a huge sale,
screenplay sale before. Yeah.
I even remember there's like a line in the script where they open up a briefcase full of money, and in it is more money that I'll make off of selling the screenplay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, he definitely brings that energy in all of his scripts. And then when he started directing, certainly infuses it in the films. And you get that here. And I, again, just seeing what the Shadow Company is doing and how it operates, that feels just so much exactly the way that he likes.
There's like a snappiness to the dialogue, but there's also like a darkness and a shock value to the writing that you can totally, now that I've, it's like, because when I watched, like, I had when so I watched Lethal Weapon a bunch when I was a kid. I kind of went through like a buddy cop or cop phase, to where it was like Lethal Weapon, and it was like, Dragnet with like Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd. It was,
we got to do that one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like Beverly Hills Cop, and so like these funny cop movies. It's like, to me, it was more about like it was less about being a cop and more of like the detective angle. But I just went through a whole big phase of that, and this was definitely high up on there. But it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't think I've seen this movie in like about 15 years. So it was fun to be familiar with Shane Black now, and to see the DNA in the storytelling, and to now check out Lethal Weapon. It's like, oh yeah, like, that was a shocking twist. Like, I kind of knew what was going to happen, but I could see a little more of the storytelling DNA in there.
There's a really great part where the general says to Murtaugh, "There are no heroes anymore," and that's the moment where Riggs comes bursting through the door, having totally escaped his torture, and he's like, "Gonna rescue everybody."
You could totally see that moment, like in Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
The surprise reveals and all of that. And it's because it scripts so well, like the bad guys think that Riggs is dead, and he delivers that quippy line, and boom, he shows up, and it's just, I mean, it's fun and it's exciting the way that he writes. There is an element to him that even in some of his more recent scripts, I feel there's kind of a dated element with some of the way that his characters talk. Like, homosexuality always seems to be an issue in his scripts, and that paired with Mel Gibson in this script was like peak grossness watching it again.
Yeah. It's a little icky. Those parts definitely didn't age too well. I don't think, my opinion is that this is not necessarily a timeless classic. I think it's very much of the year 1987 and doesn't necessarily hold up crazy well. What do you guys think?
I feel like story-wise, it holds up pretty well as an action movie.
You mean the buddy cop bits or the Vietnam Shadow Company bits?
Just tuning in as a piece of entertainment that introduces the characters and then the kind of ride we go on. The ride itself, I think, still works really well. Okay. I think there are so many, maybe it's not dated, but there's so many elements of the time that would not be in the story if it was told again today. So there's so many moments of not even like style, but just like in terms of like how they treat the psychiatrist, the whole buddy cop thing, and like the stuff that we've seen as tropes that were kind of introduced here, all the elements that, in regards to the Vietnam, like I feel it's very 1987 for sure.
Exactly.
But I think I felt like as a ride of entertainment that it still works really well.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I mean, it is a fun film. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the family life that Murtaugh has, and Riggs. I think Mel Gibson does kind of play that manic, crazy well. It's like Mad Max dropped into 1987. It does have its issues that I do struggle with every time I watch it, and but I still find it fun, and I can watch it and get past those issues and kind of like the oddness of like why are you, what's going on with this prostitute at the beginning, like all these questions that I have. I'm like, none of that really makes sense, but I end up finding it fun enough. I always, I need to remind myself when I watch it next time, once they kind of stop the general and the car blows up, I can probably just skip the whole chapter of the fight on the lawn. I never really,
it just always becomes a protracted fight scene. It does. When you talk about it, the movie does devolve at the end into a long, messy fight scene. Kind of like how we blame a lot of like, action movies nowadays. They just like the third act is just all one protracted fight scene. There's no more character. There's no more this. Well, that was happening in the 80s too. Especially Exhibit A right here.
Yeah, right. And I suppose like in the behind the scenes part of this, I could imagine there being some conversation between like Richard Donner and Shane Black and Mel Gibson as far as like the reason for that particular fight scene is, his need to kind of like overcome some of his grief and some of the stuff that he'd been holding on to. But it's just like, I guess I just don't see how it fits exactly, because it's not like he was painted as somebody who came back from Vietnam with issues from the war. Like, it's not war PTSD. He's suffering grief from losing his wife. And so,
if anything, that like his war experience is a superpower.
Yeah, exactly. That's what trained him to be such a great sniper. But by the time we get to that, like, I guess that's one of the issues. Like, if it had been a battle about like two people who had been on different teams during Vietnam, and this was their way to kind of come for Riggs to kind of get through it, it would have worked better. But as it is, it's like, well, none of that ties into the loss of his wife and his grief, and it ends up just like feeling like this tacked on fight that just doesn't connect to the story when the story has ended because the general has been killed.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They each need their revenge fight at the end.
Yeah,
they need their individual showdowns.
And that speaks exactly to what you're just saying about the 80s. Just they had these protracted third act fights that just didn't need to be as long as they are. Just
Marvel didn't invent it. It's been around for a while.
I have a question though. When they're out on the road, and Riggs gets shot, and he's wearing a bulletproof vest. So the bad guys think that Riggs is dead. They get a call on their car phone that there's been a shooting down the street from the Murtaugh house. And Murtaugh's like, yeah, later, we'll let someone else get it. And they're like, nope, they called you. It's right down the street from your house. And he's like, oh, let me guess. It's a blonde kid with big old dimples. And they're like, how did you know? So they killed the daughter's boyfriend?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they did.
And he doesn't lose a wink of sleep about it.
No.
Nor does she. She still is batting her eyelashes at Riggs.
At Riggs, yeah.
Which
the next
is understandable,
day.
Right?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to read that whole bit.
Yeah.
Because, like, she gets kidnapped, and so I'm sure she's got trauma from like being kidnapped and having to be part of this big old gunfight and having to drive a limo in a limo versus helicopter chase and
Yeah.
all of the rigmarole that she goes through. But I think she'd be mostly traumatized by the fact that bad guys killed her boyfriend right before her eyes.
Well, I almost feel like this is almost like a genetic ancestor of Michael Bay's films. Like these
Okay.
couldn't, like Michael Bay in his current form couldn't exist without these movies. And so if you compare them to the brevity of character in Michael Bay, this seems like freaking Hamlet, you know?
Mm.
Like it's weird because this movie transitions into full on pre Michael Bay, you know? It starts off in a pretty grounded place, you know, with the characters, and we think we're going to get more of a character action movie than what we end up getting at the end, you know.
Yeah, like by the time they kidnap his daughter, they're meeting in like the middle of nowhere. It's some, I guess it's El Mirage Lake, but it was like this barren wasteland, and you get those exactly like those Michael Bay sorts of really long lens shots of the helicopter and all the vehicles driving through the shimmering the long lens look as they drive across the sand to meet them. And that does feel very Michael Bay. Like, let's put it in a completely remote location because it just looks so cool. It's like, well, it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't matter. It just looks cool. And that does seem to kind of fit with the Bay
Right.
Yeah.
stylings.
And also just like cops having so much latitude just to fire heavy hardware in public areas, you know, there's like 2 or 3 times to where they're firing a machine gun, a cop runs up to him and goes like, no, I'm a cop, and he flashes like a badge for a second. All right, continue. Like, very well.
Yeah.
Go about your business, sir.
We were laughing at that because this is like when Riggs was chasing Mr. Joshua on the freeway, and he comes running up, and he doesn't even flash a badge. He's a man running with a machine gun. Like, that's what he looks like. He's undercover, and this other cop he's just like, I'm a cop, and the guy's like, oh, okay, go on by. It's like, he didn't show you anything. Like, what kind of safety are you all doing? My goodness, what a scary, dangerous time, apparently.
Man, the 80s were a scary time.
Yes.
Yeah, they were. But we do get a very cute button on the movie where Riggs goes to the Murtaugh house almost said Halloween, at Christmas for Christmas dinner. And the house is like, the front door is boarded up, and the hole that they drove in through the house, which, by the way, they drove into the house. They did it, not the bad
just
guys.
as a distraction. Just as a distraction. Huh?
It's like the house is taped up, but he gives Riggs his special bullet that he was going to blow his brains out with, and he gives it to him as a Christmas gift, and then he gets to come in and have a bad Christmas dinner with the family. Oh, it's so cute and sweet. It's the perfect button, and the button is that he invites his dog in.
Yeah,
we remember that he's got a
but
dog.
they've got a cat.
Oh, cats and dogs.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm really curious to see how you guys will rate this movie on a scale of 1 Mel Gibson buns to 10 Mel Gibson buns.
Okay.
Is that like one cheek is one,
a half,
or
is a
half?
half?
Is a half?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's got to be per cheek. So
per cheek.
So 10 would be 5 full buns.
5 full buns. Okay.
Right. So just go by cheeks.
Oh my gosh.
What about so you go first then, Nathan? How do you
Why
rate it?
Why am I always? I feel like I'm always going first.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
You don't wanna go first?
I'll go first. So understanding that some of this is dated, but I'm judging this not only as just on the ride itself, but almost kind of like as an action movie fan, this is like required reading. It's like if you had to take home five movies for like 80s action or like future action, like this, to me, Lethal Weapon would be required reading, at least to understand like some of the beginnings or the sources of it. So I feel like I'm landing somewhere in the 8.5. And then so I'll just say 8.5.
8.5.
That's really
Okay.
healthy. That's a very healthy
Yes.
Yeah.
rating.
It's a healthy rating.
I agree. What about you, Andy?
I am not quite there. I enjoy this film. I enjoy what it stands for. And I agree. Like, there is a place for this in the annals of like buddy cop action movies, as far as like what it set up, how it kind of fits into that whole, subcategory of genre. But I still largely, there's a lot to struggle with, and so I enjoy the film, but I think that I would cap it at six full buns. Six, so it's like six
Individual
three.
cheeks,
Six cheeks.
which equals 3 full buns.
3 full buns, 6 full
Right.
cheeks.
That's exactly where I was gonna put it at, as someone who was seeing it for the first time. Although it felt like I was seeing parts of it for the millionth time. It turns out I was really coming to this movie with very fresh eyes, and I really enjoyed all of the parts that have since become cliches of the buddy cop genre, but the rest of it felt really sort of long and stodgy to me. So I give it a 6 as well. 3 full buns
Nice.
from me. 3 full
Six-
buns from
six-
me.
six
And
cheeks.
I think
Six.
that I think that Die Hard is the better movie.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Definitely.
There's no doubt.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So what about a deep cut recommendation? If people enjoy Lethal Weapon, what might they also enjoy? Andy, you said you had one right at the top. So what do you
I
think?
do. It is definitely not as as I guess I could say Lethal Weapon is lighthearted. I mean, it's kind of the buddy cop comedy sort of style as far as what they're doing. There's this really fantastic movie that I only just discovered very recently. I just started watching through Walter Hill's like all of the projects that he'd been a part of, and he wrote this script in the 70s. It was directed by actor Robert Culp, and it's called Hickey and Boggs, and it is a buddy cop, let's just say, story about, it's Bill Cosby, and I know there's a lot of issue with bringing him up, period, but it is Bill Cosby and Robert Culp, both of who are on I Spy, and you'd think because of the two of them in it that, and coming from I Spy, that it would be a little more funny, but it's not. But it is a really like well crafted, really interesting kind of like character cop story about these two cops who are trying to track this stuff down, and they just seem so like downtrodden, and the film just, I don't know, I found that it worked really well. It's a very much more kind of like a noirish crime story from the 70s.
Cool.
So it's called Hickey and Boggs, and definitely needs more people to check it out. Really interesting film.
Cool.
Wow. So this is the episode where we talk about Mel Gibson and Bill Cosby.
That's right. I figured we already broke the seal. Let's get it out.
What about you, Nathan?
So I'm almost positive at some point I've already recommended this, but I feel like this is just naturally where. So for me, the thing that's interesting is all the buddy cop movie tropes, and if you want to see that just dialed up to like 1,000, but with a comedy angle, then it's got to be Hot Fuzz. Like there's so Hot Fuzz, directed by Edgar Wright with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. It's kind of like, what if there was a big police buddy cop action movie, but in rural England, and it takes those elements of the buddy cop and just leans super hard into it. It's almost the exact same soundtrack in some areas. Like it's the exact same style. And there's even almost very specific moments, of like, the two diametrically opposed cops, and then they each have a moment of kind of bro love between them as they kind of come together, the laying the flowers on the grave, and so in terms of like, if you saw Lethal Weapon, some of the Michael Bay movies like Bad Boys, and then Hot Fuzz. That would be a better triple feature than well, maybe even so in Hot Fuzz they see a double feature of Bad Boys and Point Break, but I feel
Point
like there's
Break.
way more Lethal Weapon than Point Break in Hot Fuzz. So
Well, but if you have to choose between anything and Point Break, you choose Point Break.
well, maybe you just see Point Break on its own or twice in a row. Maybe that's enough.
Yes, I recommend seeing Point Break twice in a row. Great recommendation. Mine is similar, inspired by the buddy cop tropes and the buddy cop cliches. But if you want it in a comedy form and you want it to be more wholesome and to eliminate all of the problematic elements, then you gotta go Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's my favorite cop show. It's a comedy. There's, I think, 7 seasons, starring, oh, now I can't think of his name. Jake Peralta is the character's name. Andy Samberg is the actor's name. And Andre Braugher and Melissa Fumar. And it's just a really wholesome show about being a cop. And the character who always wants to, like in Hot Fuzz, experience the Lethal Weapon like tropes,
Right.
but in a wholesome way.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
That's my recommendation. So, Andy, where can people find you in the podcasting world?
Yeah, I mean, usually we're over at The Next Reel and thenextreel.com. You can kind of get a list of all the shows that we have covered. You know, we're currently in our 13th season, having started in 2011. So we've got hundreds of movies that we've talked about over there. And we also do Movies We Like, which is a show where we bring on guests from the industry to talk about one of their favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Film Board, which is talking about a very recent movie. And so we've got a whole variety of shows that we are doing over there at The Next Reel. And then everything is part of our True Story FM network. So you can see kind of all of the shows, entertainment and not, over at truestory.fm.
Excellent. And I'm super excited because I hear you guys might be doing the Lost Boys.
We are doing the Lost Boys. Absolutely.
Yay! I'm so excited for you to do the Lost Boys. We loved it so much when we did it. It's such a treat. It's
It
a
is
real
a fun
gift.
one. I'm looking forward to
Can't wait to hear
revisiting
you
it.
and Pete talk about it.
It should be fun.
Nathan, where can people find your filmmaking endeavors?
Yeah, so the easiest place is squishystudios.com to check out info on our feature film, The Last Movie Ever Made. You can go to Squishy Studios, or you can go to the Facebooks or the Instagrams and check out Last Movie Ever Made.
Excellent. And in our bonus content, we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the film festivals that Nathan has been to recently, winning all kinds of awards and getting all kinds of ovations. And you can find me, Krissy Lenz, at the Neighborhood Comedy Theater in downtown Mesa, Arizona. It's NCT Phoenix for Neighborhood Comedy Theater Phoenix, all spelled out, .com. For showtimes, tickets, and other information. And if you're, sitting there thinking, I haven't had enough of this banter, I need more of this banter, I need more Nathan and Krissy, I can't wait another week to get any more, you can become a member of our podcast at truestory.fm. Just go to our show page. There's a cute little button that you just click and it says become a member, and you can support our show that way. Thank you guys for being great guests and talking about finally getting to talk about Lethal Weapon, a Christmas movie in the Christmas season.
Absolutely.
And when you're out there in the world, please keep the most excellent 80s movies podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on,
Party on, dudes.